Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and kick off. First of all, I want to say thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us and get to know Nick and Jamal a little bit better. So we do appreciate you being here. My name is Christy Hops, and I will be your host this evening for the call. Before we get started with anything else, I want to let you know that this is being recorded. And the reason that we do that is for people that don't get a chance to hop on right now and watch, and they will come back later to watch it. So before we do anything else, I'd like to kick it to Nick and Jamal just to introduce themselves for those of you that don't know them. Nick, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to have you, Eastern Region. Thank you, and good evening to all of you that are joining. And we'll likely repeat some of the information as we go through it, because there will be people joining in, joining out. But to kick it all off, I am Nick Daniels. I'm the NACA Southwest Regional Vice President. I am originally from Texas. I'll give you a little bit more of that background here in just a moment. But I did start my air traffic control career in the United States Marine Corps from 1998 to 2003. Spent most of my time in Camp Pendleton, California, and then ended up getting injured. I planned on never getting out of the Marine Corps. Loved the life, loved the Marine Corps attitude, our mission, and my body thought otherwise as I blew several discs out of my back preparing to go to Iraq, and ended up getting hired by or applied for and got hired by the FAA shortly thereafter in 2003. Life has definitely had its own way. I was hired to Addison Tower, a level 7 VFR tower. When I asked the agency for anywhere but Texas, it doesn't matter, I guess, if you want to go home or don't want to go home, because they put me right where I was at home, but that was the one place I was hoping to not be. But it's been a beautiful career of working at Addison Tower for 2 years, moved over to Fort Worth Center in 2005, where the White Book was, rapidly approaching. In 2006, I went to my first NAC in Washington, and when I returned from that, was the youngest person in my area at that time, and it was, pushed upon me by those who were senior to me that this is your fight, this is your union in your career. Jump in it now, we'll back you up, and let's see what we got. And I ran for area representative. I was that for 6 years. I was the secretary, the vice president. 6 years at the Fort Worth Center FAC rep, 3 years as the ARVP, and now serve as the regional vice president. Aside from that, I am a single parent of an 18-year-old son who his last day is on Friday and graduates next week. I'm beyond excited for him to see what his future holds. He plans to go and become a pilot right now. We'll see what it actually ends up with, but that is the plan currently. And I also have a 6-year-old kindergartner who is, I would say, the one that keeps me on the straight and narrow path, as she does not give me 1 ounce of leeway on about anything. But with that, again, thanks. Proud to be here. Jamal, all you, my brother.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Christy, for hosting. And as Nick said, for all the Eastern Region members who've decided to attend and those who will see this later, we appreciate each and every one of you. I am Daniels-Haltom. I'm NACA's National Training Representative. I, like Nick, began my career in the military in 1999 in the mighty U.S. Air Force. Served for 6 years there, all as an air traffic controller, and then transitioned into FAA contract towers. Worked at Groton, Connecticut, and Middle River, Martin State Tower in Middle River, Maryland. So I was in the Eastern Region at one point. So then I transitioned to the FAA, started at Las Vegas TRACON, and moved on to Tamiami Tower, then back to Las Vegas Tower, where I started my union career. I was the secretary for about 8 months, transitioned into unofficial FAC rep, and then officially the FAC rep for 4 terms, starting in 2011. I was on a CBA negotiating team for the union in 2016 and served the union in many other capacities. However, those in leadership have seen fit, or been voted or appointed to do so. And as I said, I'm currently the national training representative. Family life, I do have a daughter as well. She'll be 21 tomorrow. So I can't even really say single dad anymore because she's like a grown up. But we raised each other. So here we are with that, and happy to be here again, as I stated, and looking forward to dialogue with the members of the Eastern Region.
Okay, thank you both for that. A large portion of this will be some Q&A and interaction with Nick and Jamal, but before we get to that, I think it's important that we give both Nick and Jamal a chance to talk about some of their visions and their perspectives on some of our most important issues to our members. So I'm just going to kick it right back to Nick, if you want to go ahead with that.
Yeah, Eastern Region, listen, this is going to be about you asking your questions, your transparency, our transparency, and having an actual dialogue as a union with the goal in mind of how do we just continue to improve? What is our purpose as a union? What are the members' purpose inside that union? And ultimately, these types of styles are what Jamal and I want to bring to the table. The level of getting back to ensuring that knowledge in our union isn't proprietary. It's not coalesced by one person to eventually dish out, and ultimately being willing to everybody understand, or at least the opportunity for everyone to understand why decisions are made, what information we took in, and that we didn't just go on this because Jamal and I thought we were the haver of all the good ideas. So much so that Jamal and I've gone out and visited over 150 facilities now. We didn't want to be the two candidates that just said, listen to us, we'll tell you what, with us, you'll get more of everything and it'll put you in a perfect position. We wanted to hear what was most important to our members. I'm sure you all will get to many of those things, pay, contract, because there is a lot of misinformation that is out there. So thank you for coming to hear what we bring forward. But with that said, since those things will likely come out naturally, through the course of the conversation and your questions, the thing that it doesn't come out as much and that I wanted to offer was why Jamal and I decided to run as a team. We firmly believe in the idea that leadership isn't something that just happens because, I'm a strong-willed individual or I'm just a natural leader. Leadership is about two people pushing each other, challenging each other, trusting each other, and continuously finding ways to improve. If you surround yourself with just yes people, that doesn't in any way serve the members at which we're seeking these positions to ultimately be accountable to. So Jamal and I know that our strengths and weaknesses, I would say, line up well. There are components that we know that we can both improve on a daily basis, but that takes two people that are willing to start with that relationship from the beginning and see it through to the end. So that's a huge part of why we're here as Team Daniels-Haltom. And I'll turn it over to you, Brother Jamal, and we'll roll from there.
Yeah, for me is the reason I think these town halls are so important, and the reason I want to participate in them is I believe that our union has changed in the last 5 years. The last 2 years of Paul and Trish's term as president and executive vice president, COVID prevented them from doing what I thought was, and I referred to as their superpower. Their superpower was to go out and be amongst the members and deliver a message. And that message created a unity and an understanding. It didn't mean everyone always agreed with their message, but everyone got the same information at the same time. It feels to me that information's been siloed, and that's for the purpose of creating a power vacuum, a need and a desire to be in the good graces of union leadership, when the truth is the union needs to stay in the good graces of the membership at all times. Leaders need to be accountable, they need to be accounted for, and they need to be present. And it feels like that's slipped for me in our current situation. I know Nick to be a very engaging person, a person that likes to be around the members, and I believe myself to be the same. We have different styles. I'm not quite as bubbly, if you will, as Nick is, but you know what? I certainly like to engage with the members. I like answering questions. I like to be present and accounted for, and I want to return that to the union. I want our counterparts to also be present and accounted for. In a time before, union and FAA leadership gave a joint message on lots of things, so it was understood, so there was no confusion as to where we were going as an industry. And I'd love to see us get back to that. So that's part of what we want to do with town halls. These things won't just happen as candidates, but if we are successful, they'll happen as the actual sitting president and executive vice president. and we would encourage the RVPs to do the same and provide coherent, collaborative messages to our membership. So thank you all again for attending, and your questions will drive it. Nothing's off limits. It could be personal. It could be about pay, employee movement, whatever it may be, whatever is pressing in your world, let us know, and we'll answer it to the best of our ability.
Okay, thank you both for that. So we are going to move into the question and answer portion of this. Before we open it up, I just want to go over some housekeeping items. There are two ways you can ask your questions. You can use the raise your hand function, which you'll find right at the bottom of your screen. I will ask you to unmute, and you can go ahead and ask your question. If you feel comfortable, please turn your camera on. We do love to see who we're interacting with. If not, that's okay. Just state your name and facility so we know who we're talking to. And if you do mute yourself while they're answering your question and you have a follow-up or something you want to say afterwards, you will be unable to unmute yourself again. So just raise your hand or put it in the chat so I know to come back to you, because I don't want to miss anyone. The second way you can ask your question is in the chat. You can just type it in. We do ask that you type it in the main chat. Don't directly message myself or Nick and Jamal. We want to keep everything transparent. We don't want to miss any messages. We want everyone to be able to see the dialogue that's being had. So we can go ahead and open it up for questions. And I also want to say, not just questions. If you guys have ideas or concerns or anything you want to say, now's the time to put it out there. This is your time with the candidates. I don't want anyone to walk away feeling like they didn't get a question answered or they didn't say something they wanted to say. These guys will stay here and talk to you all night if you want to. So go ahead and ask any questions if you'd like. If we're having trouble coming up with questions, we can talk about some hot topics that we've seen on some other of our town halls. But feel free to go ahead. I know the first one's always the hardest one to get moving. There we go, a raised hand from Matt Fisher. I'm gonna ask you to unmute yourself and you should be, oh, sorry, I did the wrong thing. You should be good to go.
Got me now?
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen, for hosting the town hall tonight, and looking forward to the election. Can you speak to two issues, specifically your plan for pay for the various facility levels below the folks that are at 12s, and then what the plan might be for the folks that are at 12s and bumping up against the cap? So kind of two-part question.
Well, it's a good question. And Nick, which part do you want to take? I'll take the other parts.
I'll do how about the non-level 12?
Okay.
We'll start with that. Matt, first of all, thanks for just getting the conversation started around it. Because one of the things for Jamal and I know we've been pegged in different lights of, oh man, these guys don't ever want to see a change in pay or in contract, which is absolutely the contrary. We want to find any mechanism to negotiate pay. So for those facilities not level 12, we need to be looking at a few different things. One is, as you always do, percentage increases. The bands will forever, top and bottom, will expand so far that eventually you're just dragging the level 4, 5, 6 of the longs. We need a reset to those bands overall. So negotiate the bands back in a manner where the appropriate overlap occurs. There is a level of basis of comparison, and adding in where I love the term that Jamal brings forward, and probably will be part of what he'll be talking about, is a controller premium pay. We used to have that at one time for just being an air traffic controller. That was incentivized, and there was appropriate wage determined with that. A couple of the things that I'll just hit them quickly, and if you'd like it to us to expound on any of them, please let us know. I just don't want to bore you with all the details, and if that is the case. We want to look at immediately engaging in our longevity pay and increasing that. That's the June 1.6. Don't want to speak over anyone's head if that term isn't a normal term of art for you. That is the 1.6 increasing. Where the cap of that is, I don't know, but obviously we would be shooting for something much, or higher than the 1.6 as it currently exists today. The other part would be then start looking into some of our, what would be perceived as a current weakness. We want to turn it into a strength. Let's engage the agency in talking about longevity bonuses on top of those, where we have people that are either at a facility and happy with that facility, but their expertise of that facility should be compensated appropriately. And we have many people that are stuck at a facility. And I'm sure we'll talk about employee movement at some time as well. So at a 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25-year mark, if you've been a CPC in that same facility for that longer duration, let's have a payout and increasing a payout as that moves or as that time goes on as well. The other things we want to look into is eliminating the academy graduate pay, where once you come out of the academy, that's your first pay setting going to a facility. That isn't serving us anymore or as well anymore, and something that's antiquated and honestly just needs to be moved from. We have controllers that are sitting at a facility, whether it be because of the system and how long it takes to achieve a certification, or management controlled and they're just not training people. We have people sitting at that pay for entirely too long. We would be immediately propose to remove that and have them to go to their first developmental pay setting at their facility. And the last two that I want to mention is engaging in a Saturday premium. That has been a huge feedback from the membership, is Sunday premiums are a thing that obviously have evolved, but COVID changed to where time off, weekends, and that time with families or just out and about is valued. It's valued at a higher level than ever, and we want to engage in talking about a premium for Saturday pay. And then the other portion is about at some of our facilities, crazy amounts of overtime that we are working because of the agency's failure to properly staff our facilities over the longevity. It's looking at a few different options. One being a possible tiered system, where when you hit a certain mark, like a 200 or 250 hours, then the rate increases to 2 times. You hit another mark, it increases to 2.5 times. And looking at what that cost is, because we know that the agency honestly is putting us in a facility and getting a bargain rate for us working ourselves honestly to death right now in many of the facilities that we are, or having it looked at as going to our high 3 if our high 3 was achieved through overtime over the course of our career. So that is many of the ways that we want to move it. Those aren't obviously the end all be all. They don't just happen because we say we can't, that these ideas are Nick and Jamal. They come from the members and something that we're absolutely interested in engaging in.
Yeah, one thing I think that significant to the 4 through 9s or less than 12s specifically is looking at some classification of airspace and the multipliers associated with that. One of the things you do to protect pay is you stop downgrades. In 2018, we had, I believe, 8 level 4s. We now have 20. Stopping downgrades is a way to go about that, using the mechanisms that are in the contract that speak to trying to avoid fluctuation in pay, and then looking at, what are we missing in our class Delta airspaces? Well, one of the things we know is that there's no TCI multiplier associated with being in class Delta airspace. Bravo gets 25%, class Charlie gets 10%, and our Deltas get nothing. If our Deltas, if it required having a separation standard in Delta, then we'd be open to that as well, because those controllers are working extremely hard, not being valued enough for the work that they're doing. So we got to look at every avenue we can to make sure that they're compensated properly. None of that takes opening a contract to do that, by the way. Nothing that Nick said takes opening a contract to do that. As for the level 12s, if you're up against the cap, some of the things Nick said, premiums, differentials, they don't go toward the cap. And while you won't see those in your retirement, so to speak, you will see those in your take home, right? So finding ways to increase that take home through premiums, differentials, potentially a controller incentive, as Nick alluded to. Those things have happened before in the Green Book transition from the GS to the AT pay scale. So there's history of these things happening. So it's not fantastical thoughts. These are realities that can come to fruition. I believe we do have an employer that recognizes that the economy has affected the retention and recruitment of air traffic controllers, and going about that and addressing it is not something that has to be combative or with t-shirts that say "fix my pay." It could just be with engaging like we always have as a union that looks to find solutions for issues that exist. So thanks again, Matt. Always good questions from you. And we look forward to hearing your feedback and things and ideas that you might have to address the same issue that you brought toward us.
Thank you guys for that. Thank you, Matt, for kicking off the questions. I see a couple more hands, so I'm just going to go in the order that you started. Maurice, I'm going to ask you to unmute. You should be good.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm trying to turn the camera on really quick. So good evening, gentlemen and lady. So my question is to you all, at the end of this election, as we all know, these elections can become very contentious. They can get pretty nasty. A lot of things are said about one candidate or another, one region or another, one group or another, whatever it may be. My question is, what is your plan of action to help mend the relationships in the organization post-election?
Well, Maurice, thanks, man. Always good working with you on the multiple projects that we do. Our plan starts now. The plan is to participate in it as little as you can. The plan is to be open and transparent. The plan is to have town halls and go to, by the time we're done with this, nearly 200 facilities. We started in the Eastern region, some of our first joint visits with myself and Nick. Nick started in Alaska, but we started in the Eastern region. I don't see regions when I think of NACA because that's not how it works. Typically we have national agreements. Typically we have national MOUs. So to try to leave any region out or ostracize a region or a person would be a fruitless endeavor and honestly a waste of the energy that we'll need to move the union forward. The message will automatically be, no matter who you voted for, you're a union member. Hopefully there's no decrease in union participation, that people know that elections are healthy, and judge the people on how they run their campaigns. How have we handled ourselves, conducted ourselves, and by all means, how do we go about bringing the union back together? I think, just to be very succinct and answer your question, the first is with sincerity, reaching out to the members and letting them know that there are no divisions as far as we're part of. And if you think we've created them, we're willing to mend them through all means.
I'll give you just a brief example, Maurice, and for all those that other attending. Again, it's great to see you, brother, and thank you for the leadership, everything that you bring to our union, because your skills are, unparalleled. With that being said, one of the things that I know Jamal and I have had many times in these town halls or just discussions when you go is you'll hear a term like, oh, well, those facilities west of the Mississippi, or those facilities not in the East Coast. Like Jamal and I have been very intentional at saying each and every time, well, we are one union, and this is how we'll approach it. To immediately, leadership has to dispel that myth right off the bat. I've heard, several times of, well, I don't know if we can elect you because we won't get, certain things that we get when there's a East Coast president or something like that. Then we need to talk about, okay, what is a union and what is its purpose? And is it about you and just your region, or is it about us and collectively where we're going? And when we start breaking through those and having conversations about mindset and the mentality, and ultimately leaders helping, you don't have to be combative about it, but just like when somebody replaces with, saying, oh, this type of leave when it's really excused absence, it's just a form of education and overall leadership to correct the narrative and ensure it's focused in the right direction. But ultimately, the other part that we have to get to is making sure our members do understand the purpose of a union. And it's not just to give you things. It's about how are we doing this and where are we going together? And what is my purpose inside that union for each and every leadership role and level? And if we truly need a level of healing, I would say it would be a huge part to involve the very committee that you're the chair of. Bring in the Union Synergy Committee. They talk about all these differences between our unions, between our people, regions, different biases that are out there. We need to lean on our resources that we currently have and always invite this conversation of how do we get better and how do we alleviate ourselves of that mindset.
Thank you, Maurice, for that question. A couple people have joined, so I just want to remind people you can use the raise your hand function to ask a question. You can type it in the chat either way. And also a reminder, if you have a follow-up or something you want to say after, just raise your hand again and I will get back to you. Next, Bob Smolin from N90. I'm going to unmute you. Should be good.
Hi, I'm not sure if my video's, oh, it looks like I'm on. I got my trainee, Chris, is also here with me. Nick and Jamal, guys, thank you so much. I was listening to some of your town hall meetings and that you have on YouTube, and you guys visited 150 facilities. Jesus Christ. I don't think you guys get enough credit for the amount of effort you're putting in. And I know in my 21-year career, I've never seen like an election get as contentious as this has gotten. And sort of to piggyback off Maurice's comment, I don't, I guess it's sort of like the elephant in the room almost. And I want to ask Nick, are you worried that NACA members are deliberately attacking Jamal because of either implicit or explicit biases? I've seen stuff from his opponent. I've seen stuff on social media, and quite frankly, it's pretty disgusting. And when I got to meet Jamal came by himself to N90, and he was looking to interact with people. And there was a stigma associated with Jamal, and a false narrative. And I began speaking with Jamal, and I was so impressed on Jamal's intellect, and it immediately dawned on me that, hey, this guy knows a lot about negotiating. I could ask Jamal, I could use this guy for something that I needed help with on the side. And I really wasn't expecting Jamal to be willing to do it, but he did. And all I can say is Jamal and Nick did. They showed up for me, and both of them are extremely intelligent. And Jamal spoke about how he negotiates with the FAA, elaborated on negotiating theory. It just blew my mind away. And my question is for Nick. As the national president, what can you do to ensure that NAC is seen as an inclusive organization that actively welcomes minorities? I was just speaking to one of the minority controllers on the floor, and I really encouraged him to get on this call. And I want them to be encouraged and known that their voices are heard, and I want them to want to be able to feel like they can speak up. So what, Nick, when you get elected president, because I do feel you're going to get elected president, how can we address this? And please, thank you.
First of all, Bob, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your passion for the union, the engagement, and ultimately finding ways that we can improve, exactly like you're saying. I won't bury the lead here. Let's dive in directly to where I think some of those answers are. One, I don't need to be the person as the president that says, here's how we break down these walls. You have, like you said, Maurice spoke earlier, we have an entire committee that should be committed to that. But that committee also has to be supported and given a voice with this union. I've watched and been a part of the Union Synergy Committee until I was removed from it by Rich Santa, when I was too busy for certain things suddenly. And when I was removed from that committee, saw the efforts that were going in, the direction and the purpose. But what I've never seen is our president go out and speak about it and say that these are things that we need to be discussing. We've done them at regional, a few of the regional meetings, but we're not. It starts with Jamal and I breaking down that barrier and going out and speaking about it and saying, these are weaknesses of ours, and we must start talking about them in order for our union to improve and be better. So we have a committee. They're just underutilized. And I think that their voice, the message that they are ready to bring today, needs to be implemented immediately. I think the other part that is a blind spot, and it was kind of, I don't know if it was brushed over, it was to get a check box on a resume or on, for the election, is we should be having some level also of a women's leadership council brought forward. And if our board is, absent a female's voice, then we should be looking at how do we bring other voices in? How do we look at things through other perspectives? And we've done that in several instances. Again, I don't know if it was a checkbox exercise here, there was a women's focus group put together. And when the NEB asked Rich about what it did and what they came up with, it was, well, they didn't really come up with anything, and we haven't accomplished much. It seemed secretive, nuanced. There were no minutes from it. There were no notes from it, but there were note takers there. Something seemed off and very odd about it. But we need to establish those two groups, bringing them in, and then speaking directly to what you said initially, Bob, is about Daniels-Haltom himself. Watching him be able to handle himself and go into any facility, engage any member, it comes from the exact reason that he and I immediately started working together and engaging on projects. It was never about Daniels-Haltom. It was about what was best for this union. Been somebody who is, looked for different levels of expertise that are out there who I can learn from. And honestly, Jamal was one of those persons that lent that knowledge, that expertise to me, and then didn't just lend it to me and say, well, here, I got it and I will keep it from you. It's what all can I help you with, and what do we need to grow? And then we started naturally pushing each other to grow in different areas. So I think Jamal will absolutely be a groundbreaking executive vice president on his own stature and inspire others to seek these positions as well. And yes, that comes with these attacks. They are pathetic. And ultimately, I think that is intentional and led by Rich and Mick. I think they are doing anything they can to attack Jamal and I directly, to cause fear and doubt into others' minds. And it doesn't matter. The truth be damned. And that is what this is about. I was asked to participate in old campaigns of go bombard the NACA BBS. And Bob, I'm sure you remember that back in the day. Cause doubt about the other opponents. It is a smoke and mirrors tactic when you're not a strong candidate and you're having to play from behind. That's what they're doing. And that's why we're here hosting these town halls and being as open and transparent as we are about things. Jamal, I'm sure you have plenty to say as well on that.
Well, the question was directed to you, but the attacks are what they are. The attacks on intelligence are ones that, quite honestly, I laugh off because I know that in order to have the requisite intelligence for this union rep position is you have to verse yourself in it. It's hard for me to take it serious when someone thinks I have a lack of intellect, particularly about a CBA that I participated in writing. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I know that, as Nick said, it usually comes from a place of fear or doubt about themselves. I'm the national training rep. I think we move training. And it's not just me, people like Maurice and others, we've moved training tremendously during the time that I've had the privilege to sit in that seat. So I just let the work speak for me and continue to do that. I appreciate people like you, Bob, recognizing it and being willing to speak to it. But I think they wanted me to kind of make the campaign about that. They wanted to elicit some emotion from me so they could point to biases that exist. And I'm just not going to allow that because the union means too much to me to be distracted during that time. Because frankly, this union's done great things for all of us, all of our families. And, that's part of where we are. We wanted to continue to do that forevermore. So if I allowed myself to be distracted, if Nick questioned the validity of pairing up with me, then we'd be playing into their hands, and we're not going to do that. So again, appreciate the sentiment, Bob, and wherever you hear it, just stamp it out. And that would go for anyone who recognizes what's going on in that capacity.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Bob, for the question and the kind words. That was really nice. I'm not seeing any hands right now. If you guys look in the chat, you will see Brittany has posted the link if you would like to join the campaign and help out. That is in there. And I see Christina put yes to a women's group. We all love that. Again, as you guys can see, nothing's off the table. Personal questions, anything is fine. While we're waiting for that, if you guys, maybe Jamal, do you want to talk about some employee movement? That's a hot topic that comes up on a lot of our town halls.
Yeah, absolutely. Employee movement is something that we have to do a much better job of tying together across all the vehicles or means that employees move. Starting with academy placement, our track 2 hires, our NEST, our INSEPT, Article 124 swaps. We have to put all of those pieces and elements together, working in training. And one of the things that we're trying to do is right now, when you have en route training failure. And let's be clear that one that is an en route training failure doesn't mean they have nothing they can offer to the NAS or to air traffic control or to NACA for that matter. The job tasks overlay one another, and it's been shown that they typically do well in a 4 through 7. Recently, just had a person fell out of an en route training program and be told that they're going to have a training class in 7 months to start tower class. Now we're working through that, and it won't happen that way. But all of those systems need to tie hand in hand. We need to ensure that when people transfer and we know they're going to require training, that there's training available so that we don't slow down the process, so that we can speed up all of those processes. We need to place people appropriately out of the academy where they'd like to be, so we can limit the amount of moves that might happen as a result of people not being where they want to be. We need to sometimes inverse the inset process and start with our level 8 or 9 and below facilities, so that we can figure out, are there people who really do want to be at those facilities, but they're playing the game and recognize that over and over, the list is going to start with O'Hare and LAX and Las Vegas. What about the people that want to go to North Las Vegas and Orange County and Midway? We know from visiting hundreds of facilities that actually exist, and they do, in fact, play the game. But they would like to take the incremental step from a level 5 to a level 8. But the only way out is from a 5 to a 12. So why don't we start the inset process and do it a little bit differently? All of those things are actually ideas that we've already proffered up to those who sit in those seats. Another big thing is having experts do the work of experts. Just because someone is elected, if I'm elected as the executive vice president, it does not make me the all-seeing hand on legislation. So just because someone is elected an RVP doesn't mean that they understand the NCEP or have the time or really intuition or care to do that. Nicole Sarunas, there are several people across the NAS, controllers, that understand the NCEP process in and out and have ideas that would help. I believe we should make those people leads on projects such as that. The same thing with the Nest. Make people who are vested in the process leads so we can get better products. Doing things the way we've done them for so long hasn't boded well for us, or it's boded somewhat well, but can always be improved on. And when you're limited in your imagination and you think the only time things can change is when a CBA is open, you're given large swaths of time where you're not moving the ball forward, and that's unacceptable to NACA members. So, Nick, did I miss anything there? I know we talk about employee movement a lot.
I'll just give a brief example. I think Jamal hit it on it. No, I don't think you missed anything, by the way.
Maybe swaps. You could talk to them about what your idea is with swaps.
Perfect. And when a person is in that level 5, we've seen so many times in going out there, a lot of the requests in the system are, genuine requests. If I just want to go to this level 6, it's over here that another academy student is going to be placed at tomorrow. Like, how do I get to that place? Because the system, if we continue to try to run it, which Mick Devine, this is no knock on our INSEP team that does an amazing job given the circumstances they're in. But it's going to take leaders that go in and say, we cannot continue to force the square peg in the round hole. We have to change this idea around employee movement. We are at a 10-year low. We say it all the time. So why would we continue to try to figure out a system that's built for a well-staffed employee movement and go, well, let's just try to make it work now as well. That becomes a lottery system to which our members every 3 months are being let down. Change it to where you're given a direct target to that person in level 5 and say, when somebody will come fill in for you. They got hired, they passed the academy, now they'll get to your facility, and when they check out on local control, you'll be released to that level 6 facility within 6 months. Those are ideas and concepts that we have to begin engaging on. So that way there is a level of planning for our membership. They are looking for, I don't need to leave tomorrow, but just know that I can leave in 2 to 3 years from now. And that's where the idea of bringing back in the swaps. Let's start out with similar type facilities. Give an en route example on that, because effectively they've been dead and will forever be until that somehow the system, or not somehow, but as the system takes the next 8 to 9 years to repopulate. Well, given that there's not some other crazy circumstance that happens, is that we bring you back in the meantime. If you want to go from an en route facility to an en route facility, likely that's a 6-month or below checkout. We should be able to work with the agency and negotiate a process where the person at the higher staff facility, because they're only going to move the percentages about 0.2 to 0.3 or 4% to go from that facility to the lower staff facility. Once they certify on their first 2 R sides, the other person's 6-month release to go to the higher staff facility. And that way we can begin planning, preparing. We have an investment in the success of others, and see, does that start to remedy the situation? If we can start to clear out these moves, that puts us in a much better position to compete for those places that controllers want to be in the long run. So that would be ideas around that, and then just starting to knock down the walls from there.
Okay, thank you guys for that. While we're waiting for some more questions, if you guys look in the chat, Brittany has also posted our website, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of our stuff there, so you can follow along with everything the guys are doing there. A reminder for you as well, ballots are going out June 3rd, and they do need to be received by July 30th. I would recommend probably getting them in by July 15th to make sure they are in on time, and also check your MyNACA, make sure your addresses are correct, make sure everyone in your facility has correct addresses. We don't want anyone to miss their ballot. So leaving it open for—
I have a thing real quick.
Yep.
I do, not seeing any questions, want to make sure that we talk about the CBA and that you all take away our position unvarnished and from us. Nick and I, and every single one on the National Executive Board wants to open a CBA as soon as possible. And we most certainly want to ensure that we protect ourselves in the event that executive orders were to come up. However we go about that, whatever means that we do that is important to do. But as we talked about the transparency and wanting to have these conversations, there are intentional lies, or people are intentionally being misled about the executive orders and how they exist. I hear things such as they were defeated in court. The fact of the matter is, at one point, it did look like they were defeated in court. I believe a circuit judge in Washington, D.C. did declare them unlawful, and then that was subsequently overruled, and those executive orders were implemented. The fact of the matter is, our union members deserve the absolute truth. There should be unequivocal truth about where we are and what those executive orders can potentially do to us, while also not saying that we have to freeze because those executive orders exist. Right now, about half of the country is getting a briefing, and the rest of the half of the country is being told there's nothing to see here, when in fact there's plenty to see there. Members deserve to know what potentially could happen. So we'll answer more questions about what could happen as they come, but I want to be very clear about our position on the CBA. If all things are the same, in 2026, we would love to negotiate a CBA. But the biggest thing in the CBA, and the thing that everybody's after, is pay. You don't have to wait for the CBA to be open to address pay, and it'll kind of give you an indication of where people are when they're not doing that right now, and they want to hold this as some type of holy grail that only they want to see open, when in fact that hasn't been the case. It isn't the case now, and it's never been the case. Nick, you got anything to add to that?
We're going to go through very difficult times. United States president's election, we know the executive orders that are lying in wait. That is something that we have to get out there and speak about. And as Jamal said, the more misinformation that's put out will only divide us further. Who gains when we divide? The agency. That's who gains when we're out there spreading misinformation internally to try to win seats. This isn't about winning a seat for Jamal and I. This is about finding a path forward, protecting our rights, standing in front of you and having honest conversations about why we would make a decision to go the direction we are. You can't just sit up there and be scared to say words like, hey, look at this extension. And Jamal and I weren't the ones who brought forward the words extension. It was Rich Santa who came to us and said that the administrator was willing to offer an extension. The thing is, we're just not scared to go out and educate our members and have a discussion about it. As Jamal said, you don't have to sit there and just say, and this is why you've heard him say it multiple times, that will wait for a contract to do anything. You go in and you engage in MOUs. That may be what it needs to look like in the future, where we protect our rights. We engage in MOU discussions to ultimately move the very things that our members are concerned about, that our union needs to see change, and that we cannot just sit around on our hands and hope and wait for one day that everything lines up perfectly, and then that's when we'll do it. The landscape has changed, and it's changed forever. It changed when anti-federal executive orders went into place. It's not about who the president of the United States is. It's about what laws are they going to put in place. And when you have the ability to negotiate, and do those strip our collective bargaining rights away. If we're not out there educating our members on that, it will sow this hate, discontent, the thoughts of the union's not doing anything for me. Those are things that we have to collectively overcome if we're going to be strong enough. And the way that we're going to be strong enough and send a very clear message to the agency is this election. The agency is going to see how many of us turn out in this election and how many of us are paying attention and what direction are we wanting to go in. That's where you're going to come into play on it. And like Jamal said, we're being very intentional in making sure that the truth is out there, not the narratives being spun on an anonymous forum. So if there's anything else around that, I'd love to answer it.
Thank you guys for that. Matt has another question. Matt, I'm gonna unmute you. Should be good.
Thank you, gentlemen. The recent passage of FAA reauthorization, there was a little bit of a victory lap for the CRWG numbers, and if implemented, I think it's a fantastic development as far as trying to fix some of our staffing issues. But from talking to some of the folks in our building who've read the bill, it's not clear to us that it's going to be immediately implemented. There's still a committee it's got to go to, or can you share some of the details or context there? Maybe explain that to the group.
Matt, I'm glad you asked it. This is exactly the reason that leadership going out and having a cohesive message with, in direction from the president, executive vice president. If Jamal and I were to be in those positions, we would we have information, and it's come from our chief of staff, Daniels-Haltom, about where everything is going. And like you said, there is some nuance to all of these things. One is the implementation of the Collaborative Resource Work Group, which is wholly controlled between the union and the FAA. That is to change it for the purposes of INSEPT and the priority placement tool, which is used for, obviously, INSEPT, and then it's used for academy placement and other things as well. There has to be an implementation phase for something that the entire time those parties could control, but what we as a union were fighting for was to ensure that the long-term effects were going to be a portion of this, and that we didn't just implement it haphazardly for the purposes of INSEPT and the priority placement tool. So those things will be worked on over here, Matt, is the implementation for employee movement. The secondary piece of that is the long-term placement of them in the controller workforce plan. And that's what takes the control away from the administrator and FAA finance and says, you will continue on a hiring goal to this collaborative number between the ATO and NACA. That was the group that I was on with Deanna Capelli, Eugene Freeman, and Mick Devine. That group of us were on the CRWG actual team. So what has been called to Congress now is a reconciliation between the the FAA finance, who has always owned that number, and now the CRWG, and to determine why the difference in the two methods. There'll be an entire session, and we'll call it a hearing on that, and where they ultimately need to end up and lie for the long-term and interim. So yes, there's still a long road to go there. It was a great victory for our union on getting those introduced. Now we have to continue down the path to get them solidified and ensure that our method is seen as the appropriate way to proceed in the future. So some of that does remain and hangs in the balance, and that's an education piece as it develops that we'll need to bring to the membership.
Another piece to that, Matt, is what we always preach, when we teach rep training, when we were taught rep training, is you have to be aware of the history so that you can know where to go. What you're being fed is something that you're being told new, or was it already a reality? When the agency touts themselves for doing max hiring, and frankly, Rich goes out and says the agency is going to do max hiring for the next 5 years. Well, prior to COVID, the agency was doing max hiring. What does max hiring look like? What is actual max hiring? Max hiring until you reach the CRWG number, or to sustain the CRWG number, is a lot different than just max hiring, because that looks different and it lasts for a longer period of time. It's indefinite, essentially, because that number is always going to be adjusted. But if you didn't know that, it sounds really good. If your counterpart tells you, hey, by the way, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to start max hiring, that might feel like there's been a win. As we know, our attrition rate at the academy for en route is about, we're losing about 37% of the people that start. For terminal, we're losing about 30% of the people, 33 actually, of the people that start. So when we hire 2,000 controllers, we're not getting nearly 2,000 that even show up to the field. And oh, by the way, then there's another attrition rate at the facility levels. So while max hiring sounds good, while CRWG, and to be very clear, it is a win for the union. And we are proud of NACA and all of the people that worked along the way to get that to fruition. We're very proud of them. It is a win, but we have to be tempered. And frankly, the members need a message on what it means and what they can expect out of it, not just someone going around taking a victory lap and patting themselves on the back to say, look what I've done.
I guess, and I would just want to give, Matt, a great job on the diligence of going through the act, and for our controllers to be questioning that of what's out there. Is one of the parts of that act I was quickly looking is it is the interim adoption of the collaborative resource work group model, but then the continuation of this panel that will be put forward next. So we do have a fight to continue in this regard, in this realm, to ensure that we ultimately strip this away from what we've forever called the bean counters, and allowing them to dictate what our facility needs actually are.
Thank you for that, Matt. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands currently. For those of you that just joined, thank you for being here. You can ask questions. We're currently doing that. So you can raise your hand in the function at the bottom of your screen. You can type it in the chat.
Yeah, I would also want to say, while we have, I know this is the Eastern region, I feel a kinship to the Eastern region. I was born on the East Coast. Well, not born, I'm sorry, born in Texas, but raised on the East Coast. And for years, my Western Pacific brothers would tease me about being an Eastern region member. Nothing has ever changed for me. I have tremendous respect for the complexity of the work, for the people there, particularly to those that work at N90. There's also a bizarre rumor that myself and Nick want to see the airspace moved from the Newark area to Philadelphia. I would just challenge people to ask yourself, why do these things come up during an election? Why would anybody like myself, the national training rep, have an interest in seeing something like that? And just challenge yourself to say, is there any documentation of something like that from myself or Nick? Why would someone go about making such a statement? Who elicited the question? Who asked me what I feel about that and why I want to do that? It's bizarre. It's nonsensical, honestly, and it's just frankly not the truth. The only part Nick and I have ever played in this at all was just having a philosophical discussion with the agency and our counterparts about how to effectively train very high-level facilities with people that come from other high-level facilities, with the thought that perhaps that would be a way of addressing the training in the Newark airspace to create CPCs in a more expedient fashion. But at no point has Rich or Mick or anyone heard me or Nick say we would like to see the Newark airspace move to Philadelphia. So I want to be very clear in putting that to bed. I never had a conversation with Joe Segreto about it. I never had a conversation with the Newark area rep about it, period. I've never, ever said anything that says I support that being moved, ever.
Yeah, I'll be extremely direct in that zero desire to see our members force or that. Jamal and I get to be a blank slate, honestly, when it comes to those types of issues. You get the chance to educate us, Eastern Region. As the Southwest Region Vice President, if we want to talk about Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana, Arkansas, I would have a level of expertise. As we go, that's the reason that we started out there, is because there is so much history to be learned. There is so much to understand in the complexities of it. Everything from a New York Center to learning that it's not even New York Center who always runs the northern feed into N90, and just the complexities of what that looks like up there. These are opportunities for us to learn. But what I didn't want to do was be a candidate for president, and on day 1, September 1, and Jamal as executive vice president, and say, okay, hey, Jamal, we got to start trying to figure this out now. Like, what are all the issues that are going on that's out there? That is why the investment, as Bob spoke about it earlier, is now. That is why we're taking this as serious as we are. And we are wanting to be very direct in our support for our, NACA family that is in N90. And if for some reason the misinformation is out there going to lead the way, it's our job as leaders to dispel it. And if we can do anything to help with that, we absolutely will.
Thank you, Nick and Jamal, for that. We do have a question in the chat. Toby asks, can you give a specific example of a pay MOU you might push for?
Yeah, well, I can tell you pay MOUs that we would absolutely push for, and Nick just addressed one, is getting the AG pay ban removed and starting at our first developmental pay ban as soon as we get there. Hitting the ground running, because those members, in particular, let's use New York. Let's use an AG at N90 or ZNY, or for that matter at Islip Tower or any of the varied towers, Teterboro. In that greater New York area, it's very expensive to live. The agency controls a lot of what goes on during that process and starting their training. So why not start people off at what's much closer to a livable wage, so that they don't, in their infancy and training, have their brain clouded with where they're going to live. Those are things that we think we could take to the agency and quickly say, this is antiquated. It makes no sense to do it. It's not giving them anything that they're not eventually going to get anyway, and it's sensible. Having MOUs as it relates to the Red Book. When we signed a Red Book extension, we did put in that Red Book extension the 1.6 that we all see, and we grow to think that that's just something we've always had, but that actually occurred at that time. So if that 1.6 could be bumped up to a higher number, having that done via MOU, regardless of position and band, was also one of the things that came through that MOU. Again, as I said before, when we transitioned off of the GS scale onto the AT pay scale, there was an MOU there that transitioned to pay. So it doesn't always have to be via CBA negotiations. If you have a serious-minded leadership pair or team, because it won't just be us, we'll elicit the support of our chief negotiator, who's also now the chief of staff. We'll use members across the country. We'll use our great NACA staff to come up with MOUs to address the needs. And if nothing else, Toby, what it'll do is it'll give you the temperature of the party that you're negotiating with. Do they even have an interest in pay, or do they only have an interest in taking things from us? Because term negotiations, full term negotiations, everything's on the table. So we could look and see what we could do with pay through MOU, and there is precedent for it.
I think the thing that we need to evolve, we need to look at what the evolution of negotiation ultimately looks like, is if there are executive orders that are in place, our MOUs not just being singular in an issue. An MOU can have multiple sections, multiple issues that are being discussed. So it wouldn't just be one MOU about academy graduate pay. We could look at engaging on 10 to 15 different things that we're wanting to, somehow that bringing, is there agencies interest? Well, good. We have interest too. And many of those revolve around pay, as well as introduction. And I'm sure we'll get into a point about mental health in having discussions around that. We have many areas that this union needs to evolve from. And, this is what happens when a contract has stayed in place for this length and duration is the world around us evolves. Now it's our time to evolve with it. And that means our negotiating style as well. So having very robust MOUs, I think will be something that we need to explore in the future as well.
Thank you for that question, Toby. And again, go ahead and put your questions in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like. And then also Bob said, thank you for addressing the N90 Newark Philly move. While we're waiting for some more questions to come in, Nick briefly touched on mental health. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more, Nick?
Absolutely. Something near and dear to my heart. I know many of the controllers that are out there. It's one of those things that is the unspoken reality, unfortunately. A world that we've evolved and lived into, norms and cultures just become something that must be challenged at a point, right? In our American society, as well as inside our workplace and professions. We, when you were hired when I was hired in 2003, and still today, it's always discussed about, man, I don't know if I can say this because I might lose my medical. This is my one career. I did not graduate college. This is something that I fight for at the level I do because that it's the career and profession I have to protect for every single one of my NACA family that's out there, because I know I'm not the only person that's banking on this profession taking me to retirement. But with that being said, when we realize that we have an epidemic, that epidemic is around our mental well-being, our mental health, and it's going to take leaders to challenge the norms of the past, to speak about it and not just speak about it for the points of awareness. That's a world that I lived in for the longest time is, man, this has to be talked about more, because I don't think people are realizing the gravity of this. And I'll give you the story and the history. If you haven't heard it on other town halls, my mother died of suicide when I was 10 years old. I forever grew up, I know, scarred about that. I know I grew up, always having to contemplate that in the back of my mind of my mom, deciding to take her life and have myself and my younger brother left behind. She was battling demons that I'll never understand or know. But I know I've battled demons. We all have. Life is not perfect and it's not easy. We must start making strides and efforts as leaders to say we're going to start chipping away at this wall of actual action, of actual movement. And one of those things that we would do is go out there and propose an article or an MOU or in a term negotiation, an article for the contract about an optional hour every single pay period if scheduled in advance. So our members could utilize the services of EAP, expand the services of EAP to be able to have a discussion about whatever it is that maybe it could be good, it could be bad, it could be ugly. What are those things that we're needing to, that we quite often don't say out loud or that we don't want to talk about? If you had an hour of paid time to be able to discuss it, it's a step in the right direction. And maybe one person uses it the first year. Maybe 10 people use it the second year. Maybe 1,000 people finally realize this is something worth, in the third year. It is a place to begin, but it's going to come from us actually negotiating and engaging the agency and having them recognize that it's an epidemic, it's a reality, and it's something that we have to face and get traction on. And we know that we, as a union, can be the leaders for all the aviation industry and ultimately for all of labor when it comes to this this very pressing issue.
Thank you for that, Nick. We do have another question in the chat coming from Mike. He says, could you use your platform to ask our brothers and sisters throughout the NAS to contact their legislators and urge them to tell the FAA to find alternative option to forcing 18 N90 BUEs to Philadelphia?
Hey, Mike, I'll speak on it. How you doing, brother? I'll speak on it real briefly as it relates to the platform. Is by all means, that people want to use, we should reach out. We should do all the things that you just alluded to. But what we should have, even more than that, is a coherent, cohesive message from our national president and executive vice president and our NEB to say this is what we're doing. To my understanding, and this is only in a cursory conversation that I had with Rich about it, is that is something that Brian, I believe Alex Navarro, and Mike Christine are currently working on. I've seen some letters because I happen to be on the thread that you're on from the RT1 class you were in that you sent out. And I asked about those, and it was said, we're not doing that yet. Our message will come out coherently together. That's what I was told. So when that is out there, when I know that's the direction, then I will wholeheartedly support that. I can't be doing both things at the same time. I can't undercut the president of the organization and then also ask for unity. So I would love for Rich to make that the decision that we're doing, and then I will 100% support it. But on this platform, what we'll say again, and what we say to all is, we do not want to see members moved involuntarily. That be anywhere, particularly N90. We know that disrupts families. You've been in our classes. We don't even like people to get an Article 46 to move RDOs. So we certainly don't want people to have to move 2 states away, a 5-hour drive, a 3-hour train, a plane ticket. We do not want to see that under any circumstances. But yes, through this platform, we'll make that very clear. I hope that's a satisfactory answer. But the bigger push that you've tried to make legislatively, that needs to come from our national president, and we'll absolutely support it.
Mike, thank you for the question. Not seeing any other hands or questions in the chat currently, but I do just want to urge you guys, again, nothing's off the table. Now's your time. This is your union. These are your candidates. Anything you can think of that you want to ask, now's the time to do it. I don't want anyone to walk away from here feeling like they didn't ask a question or they didn't say something they wanted to say. So please feel free to go ahead and ask anything. Not seeing any other hands. Nick, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about that may drum up some more questions?
So I think we've hit the highlights, right? Pay, contract, employee movement, mental health, and ultimately leadership. I've been pegged for many different things. I've been blamed for many different things somehow as the Southwest Regional Vice President. I will. I'll touch on this and see if it sparks anything else or any other conversations for Jamal. But what we need is a president that's accountable, and that's something that I know Jamal and I are both willing to bring to the table. Not somebody who sits back and says this is everyone else's fault of why I wasn't able to do the very things and bring you the pay or engage in a contract. Everything is now, if you give me another 3 years, that's when I'll get it done. And to me, that's absolutely unacceptable. I could not stand up and teach, engage in rep training, engage in onboarding our new representatives and say, if you see something that you ultimately can't stand behind or that you don't believe in, then you have an option. Stand up and fight for the very thing that you believe in the direction that you see for a union. I see a union that is not only engaging, but is yelling. We want to understand direction. We want to be a part of something, but we don't know what that thing is anymore. And with that being out there and seeing the way that we're being led with one person coalescing all the power and information, giving out different stories in different versions, and then promising things along the way of, oh, if you have a problem, I'll promise you this. That's not a way a union acts or exists. So that decision was stand up and say, we believe that we can do it different. We believe that we know that we can do it better. And that's where you have the ultimate option and decision of where to go from there. But I wasn't going to sit here and run for regional vice president. I'd love to be the Southwest Regional Vice President again. I think we have a great part started. I know John Bratcher is going to only take it with his team to an entirely new level. And I look forward to seeing the grounds and efforts being made in the Southwest region. We all have unique parts, but we also have great similarities. And that comes from a president and executive vice president who's willing to go out and engage in all of those regions and all of those facilities and have the conversations, difficult or easy. That is something that Jamal and I, again, will bring to the table. So the option was say, I believe in it and run for RVP because that's the easy thing to do, or challenge it and say, no, we can do better than that. And this union every 3 years gets that option and voice. We saw 3 years ago a national executive board practically tell us who's going to be our next president, executive vice president. Was that the best option? Didn't sit well with me. And it's something to learn from. And it's okay to admit when we're wrong. It's okay to learn the lessons that when they extended the contract, when Rich and Mick were on that board and it wasn't communicated well, and now everybody wants to deny it, that we can learn from that. And we are, have missed opportunities and we grow from there. But we got to be having leaders that are willing to say it, that are willing to admit it and not just say, well, nothing to see here. It wasn't me. It was probably that, damn Southwest Regional vice president's fault. We need a leader that's going to lead, not one who's going to blame and deflect. And that's what I know we bring to the table from there. So wanted to make sure that was said while we had the opportunity. Jamal, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, brother.
Well, I would love there to be more questions because I do hear a lot in the peripheral about the Eastern region and them believing things or being told things that I wish we could dispel or have conversations. So I'll just say this, I don't like our union not being a safe place for us. The world, our country has enough division and fractures and misleading ads and things such as that. It's unfair to our membership. Our membership should be able to have a very distinct trust in its union. The mistrust comes from a lack of transparency, and it's hurting all of us. It affects how Nick and I can campaign because we often have to do it from a position of dispelling things that are just flat out bizarre. You deserve it. You all deserve it, and you haven't been getting it. This is not meant to slight Rich. Personally, I have no issue with Rich. This is not meant to slight Mick. We started our campaign and didn't mention their names for months. They started a campaign and immediately started to mudsling and point fingers at us. Initially, we were the opponent. Then we became names, and then we became Team NDJH and all of their slights. It's unfair to you. It's okay to point to work that we haven't done well because we'll do that about them. But to sow distrust in this union is harming our union. You have new people coming into this union that immediately don't have a trust for it. Our union should be where people go to get information, and they should be able to trust that information is true. And if it changes, it's going to change globally, and everyone's going to know why it's changed. We're not there now, and that's hurtful to me, and that's why I'm running. As Nick said it, I like being the national training rep. It's a position where I think I have a great influence, but I saw a gap in leadership that I wanted to attempt to fill, and you either get to tell me yes or no. Either way, life goes on, but our union deserves the best and people that are 24 hours, 7 days a week dedicated to this, and that's who we are.
Thank you both for that. We have another question from Bob. I'm going to unmute you. You should be good.
Oh, did that work? Hey, thanks, guys. I'm gonna have to go back soon. I just wanted to make an observation. Why I really distrust Rich Santa, and it really has to go with my 30 coworkers who have been on this seesaw. Am I going to Philly? Am I not going to Philly? Am I selling my house? Am I not selling my house? Oh, I thought I was going. I sold my house. They've been living in limbo. And when he came here in June of 2022, I flat out asked him about Section 804 and its applicability to this move. And what he said to me was the FAA can get a waiver for Section 804. He never told me that Section 804 did not apply. What he told me was Section 804, they can get a waiver. And then I said, had they done that before? And the response to me was, yes, they have. I then filed a FOIA request, and I've shared that response with Nick and Jamal. And that turned out to be a big, fat lie, that the FAA has never filed for a waiver. And that's a man that's in the position of leader of this union. And he flat out lied straight to my face about Section 804. I don't trust him. So when I hear the videos that come out from a Region X guy who says this guy's manipulative, he's a liar, that resonates with me. And that's not from Nick and Jamal saying to me, hey, Rich is a liar, Rich is manipulative. I'm an N90 guy, and it's not popular not to support Rich. I don't support anybody that's going to lie to me about something that has put 30 of my coworkers in this predicament where they don't know where they're going to be in a couple months once again. So I just want to leave on that note that, I want anybody who's listening to this to hear that this is, a member, 21 years, a NACA member in the FAA at N90, who cannot support Rich Santa, because I agree with what these guys are saying from my own firsthand experiences with Rich, that he is a liar and he does manipulate people. And that a liar and somebody who manipulates is why I'm stuck in a facility that is contemplating starting a movement to leave this union. Why there is, so much animosity towards NACA right now. And that's why I agree that there needs to be a change in leadership. And I thank you, Nick, for holding this for the Eastern region. Thank you for addressing an issue so pertinent to my facility and spending so much time on that issue. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't want to talk about it at all, actually. I wanted to hear what everybody else had to say. But, I can't thank you guys enough for addressing the issue that's extremely relevant to my building right now. And thanks again, guys. 150 facilities, that's unbelievable. It's incredible the amount of work and effort you guys do.
Hey, Bob, before you go, your trainee, I think by looking at him, I saw him at Tisu and Tetra. How's he doing? How's he doing in training?
Oh, he's going to check out. He's going to check. He's
going to
check.
He was killing it. And then he told me he was a tower guy, was jealous of how, man, he did an amazing job. And there was a very tall young lady. I hope they're all doing well.
Julie. I think he's talking about Julie. Yeah, she's in the classroom right now, so she hasn't touched the floor yet. But our trainees overall in N90, are doing great. Mike was the training rep before he became the vice president. I think he did a great job. Give him props to that. So yeah, I think the training program is really taking a spin here. We're checking out people, and it's just a different mentality shift that we're trying to promote. And me as the Kennedy area representative, and I know I've spoken to you about the trainees, and I know that's dear, and and it means a lot to you. It also means a lot to me. I just wanted to treat people the way you were treated, and everybody gets their fair shot. And we've talked about that, and just showing them empathy. And then also, I think you judge a lot about a person, how they treat the people that are most vulnerable. I think, and the fact that you are the training representative, and you have this trainee centered approach that you've talked about with me. It just speaks a lot about your character. And I know your heart in going to 150 facilities. I know your heart is in the right place. So it means a lot to me, and that's why I support you. And I know Nick's heart is in the right place, and that's why I support him. And I hope this gets out to to everybody who's going to vote. And I hope you guys hear this. And we do need a change. And thank you so much, guys.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a good one.
Hey, thank you, brother. And know you got to go back. Y'all are strapped. I'll leave this for the audience, and if you have to leave, Bob, I completely understand. Is one, thank you for being so bold to say your piece. We should be able to say our piece in this union, because there are a lot of members out there that are scared. They're scared, like you said, to dissent or disagree. It's not popular to not support it. That should tell us the state of our union and the state of the leadership. If I don't care if you're wearing the biggest I Love Rich or I Love Mick button or whoever the candidate may be, you're part of this union. And if Jamal and I are successful in 3 years from now, the next elections will hold none of that, because we'll know that we get better from having the discussions, that challenging the status quo, you know, honestly, with integrity and opening up and being willing to have these discussions is how we become a better union. Not about, was I the best? Was Jamal the best? How are we going to be the best? And the more that we stay focused on that, the more that we actually take ourselves out of this and make it about the membership, this union will have the chance to actually move out of its current state and into a land that we haven't seen before. That's what I look forward to being a part of. So Bob, thank you for helping lead that move.
Thank you, guys. We're going back. I got to train him on something.
Get him.
See you.
Well, check out, bro.
See you, brother.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm not seeing any more hands. Bob's hand is still up, but I think he had to go back. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So just a reminder, Brittany is posting in the chat if you want to join Team NDH, if you like what you're hearing. There's a link for that, as well as all of our social medias. Last call for questions. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand. I am not seeing anything. Nick or Jamal, do you want to touch on anything else, or should we let these people get back to their evening?
I'll close out really quick, and then I'll pass it on to Nick. There are other facilities, obviously, in the Eastern region, other than just N90 and ZNY. I see Andrew from DCA. One of the questions Toby asked was, how do we increase pay, or what MOUs? We have an MOU sitting out there that's not being fully enacted, and that's the MVT MOU that was associated and attached to the Abacus thing that I'm sure you've all heard of. Dusting those things off and telling the FAA that it's unacceptable to be held up by a program, while other facilities, there's 13 to 16 potential multipliers that could have been included already into our TCI that might have saved a downgrade for DCA, or might have ensured that another facility was upgraded. Things that we haven't looked at since then that we should be addressing. Waiting until the FAA is ready has never been something that's been fruitful for NACA. Addressing things, having the gall and the ability and the fortitude to go forward and make plans. And sometimes those plans will fail, but you share them with your members, you let them know that you're working for them. That turns our union back to where it was. People don't have to always hear yes. They have to know that you're working hard on their behalf. I guarantee, because it's nothing that we haven't done to this point, it's what we'll do, and even more when put in those positions. The pressure that it takes to put your hand up and say you want this position means you can't let people down if you really meant it. And that's not what we're about. So thank you all for taking your time. I know we did spend more time than probably all of you wanted to on one particular facility, but that facility matters just as you do. And I wanted to convey that there at the end. As you said, we got social medias you could follow and see more of our visions and see that they don't change on the daily and based on who we're talking to. They're written.
I think what you see is an evolution. You see an evolution through these conversations, through these ways of sharing different ideas. And it takes leaders who are wanting to be a part of that. We cannot forever be bound by the world of, well, that's just how we've always done it, or this is who somebody told us to listen to. No one puts a gun to your head when you get a ballot in the mail, you fill it out, you do it in secret, and you put it right back in the mail. That's what it's going to take. And it's going to take people saying, am I good with the status quo? Am I good with it being the way it is now? And are the people that have been in those positions for 5.5 years going to suddenly take it in a new direction now? Or have they just not said anything for the 5.5 years, and now that they're being challenged, it is not a popular concept to not say status quo is fine. Look at the records, as Jamal said. Ask us the questions before you vote. We want to make sure you are a well-informed membership. And to be honest, 150 facilities, as by the end of the campaign, around 200 to 220 is where we'll be. We hit the ground running on September 1st, but that's not where the work ends. It's being right back in those facilities and now having further discussions about the engagements, as Jamal was just mentioning about. And as he said, we guarantee hard work. The other thing that we guarantee is in our first term, you will see one of us in every one of the 313 FAA facilities. We will be in our Region X facilities. We will be out there with our FCTs and DODs. We'll be standing in solidarity with each of you. not because our presence is what's requested. It's because of being a part of something is what's needed. So with that being said, thank you all for the time. Thank you for being a part of this union, being willing to engage in it. We can't wait to see each of you cast your vote and make your voice heard in this election.
Okay, with that, we will close out. Thank you everyone so much. I know most of us are on 6-day work weeks. I know you have families and it's dinner time and all that. So we truly, truly appreciate you showing up, taking the time, engaging. It has been fantastic, Eastern Region. So with that, everyone have a good night. Thank you so much.
See y'all. Thank you.